I am beyond thrilled to announce that doors will soon be opening to the Wholesome Fertility Method online program. If you've been listening to this podcast, you know that I love to infuse meaning and spirituality into my practice, and I'm so excited to be sharing this program that I have put my heart and soul into. I have left no stone unturned with the creation of this program. This course includes everything that I provide for my patients, including how to understand your charts from a Chinese medicine perspective, detox recipes and protocols, simple and easy ways to go clean on products and cosmetics, research-backed nutrition that has been shown to improve fertility health, fertility-boosting supplements and herbs, breathing exercises, bonus fertility yoga videos, techniques to awaken your innate power to heal yourself, and what answering your sacred call really means. My deepest intention with this program is to empower and inspire you to align with your highest self. I will be offering both independent study as well as added coaching, which has limited spots available. If you're interested in getting on the waitlist, then don't wait. Visit www.thewholesomefertilitymethod.com now, as doors will only be open for a limited time. You will not want to miss it. Episode number 53 of the Wholesome Fertility Podcast. Welcome to the Wholesome Fertility Podcast. I'm Michelle, a fertility acupuncturist here to provide you with resources on how to create a wholesome approach to your fertility journey. My guest today is Dr. Patti Haebe. Dr. Haebe is a results-driven provider, passionate to share the power and freedom of feeling your best. Her work is targeted, specific, and effective. Her training in naturopathic medicine makes her an expert in integrative medicine. She combines the best of modern medicine, which includes lab testing, imaging, and diagnosis, with the ancient wisdom of Eastern medicine, which includes herbs, nutrition, and traditional Chinese medicine. She has also worked in the nutritional supplement industry. This, along with her obsession with biochemistry, enables her to give her patients the advantage of knowing what works and what does not when it comes to nutritional supplements. Dr. Haebe emphasizes the importance of creating balance in our lives mentally, physically, and spiritually. She has extensive training in bioidentical hormone replacement therapy, endocrinology, fertility and preconception preparation, weight loss, and detoxification. Dr. Haebe believes that in order to obtain optimal wellness, it is essential to first identify the causes of disease. She focuses on actively listening to her patients in order to best understand their stories and needs, while educating and working with the patient in order to generate a treatment plan that is customized just for them. She is a strong proponent of the patient-doctor relationship and believes that with collaboration, the best results are achieved. So welcome to the podcast, Patti.
Thank you so much for having me.
So I want to start out by asking, what inspired you to learn naturopathic medicine and then also specialize in women's health?
Yeah, it's kind of a roundabout story, actually, which I feel that a lot of people's ends up being. But I was always fascinated by medicine. I became a CNA when I was 16 years old and started working in the hospitals and was like, this is what I want to do. I want to be a surgeon. Went down the line, went to undergraduate school, pre-med. And then throughout that process, while working in the hospital, I saw people being saved, but I saw them kind of getting sicker or like kind of hitting this plateau, which always kind of intrigued me a little bit. And then my dad actually ended up having a heart attack. And conventional medicine completely saved his life. It's a miracle that he's still around, really. And I sort of took care of him in his recovery and was going to visits with his cardiologist afterwards and everything. And one of the cardiologists basically looked me in the eye and said, well, in about a year or two, he's going to need a pacemaker. And then in about 3 to 5 years, he'll probably pass away. That's just the severity of damage that was done. And, I was like, is there anything else we can do? And he goes, no, just this list of prescriptions and, take it easy. And I just was like, but, isn't there something out there about diet and inflammation and really, like healing the heart instead of just, putting it on the couch? And so I actually found a naturopathic cardiologist in Arizona, and he just turned my dad's life around. He was
Oh,
more
wow.
vibrant and healthy than he'd ever been. Like all of his markers for cardiac inflammation just totally turned around. And I was just blown away by the capabilities of something seemingly so simple, but that just wasn't available to us otherwise. So then I
Yeah.
switched, pivoted from traditional medical school to naturopathic medical school. And then as far as the woman's health component is, I just personally always struggled with irregular cycles and strange periods, and my mom struggled with fertility, so it was something that I was concerned I would be destined to struggle with, and she had miscarriages. And so that really just sort of, as I went through medical school, really pulled me in that direction of, just how hormones affect everything. And so working with
Yeah.
women and men to get those hormones in check just is so fascinating and rewarding to me.
Yeah, definitely, for sure. So that's actually a really interesting story. It's interesting how we get inspired to learn from either our parents or our own health, or we start out as patients ourselves.
Right. Definitely. Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah. So I've interviewed naturopathic doctors before, and we've talked about how it works. And one of the things that I love about it is that it's very similar to Chinese medicine. And I know that some of the programs actually include Chinese medicine,
Yeah, ours did
correct?
in Arizona actually. So I was excited because I know you're a licensed acupuncturist, and it was such a crucial piece, I feel like, in treating the whole person. So I really do love that component mixed in with naturopathic medicine.
Yeah, it's awesome. And I would have loved to learn what you do as well. And I think the two work so synergistically. And I also think that the main, really the heart of it is the belief that the body heals itself. Once you facilitate an environment for it to heal, it's the body that really does the healing, because the body's programmed to go and restore itself.
It's so true. And I think sometimes we put so much external faith in other things and other people to fix our bodies, and we get away
Hmm.
from the fact that our body has this incredible capability to heal itself, and it wants to heal itself. It wants to protect itself. It wants to create new life. Like it's just so strong and powerful, but we do have to tap into that and kind of give it the nutrients it needs to head that direction.
Yes, absolutely. And I also think it's fascinating how, or it's an interesting point that the reproductive system is just not the body's priority.
Hmm.
So if everything else is out of whack, it's not going to worry about that. It's putting that like last resort because it wants to survive. The body is thirsting for certain nutrients or needs to adjust itself. It's, not going to focus on that. And a lot of times people who go through reproductive challenges are finding that their reproductive challenges save their lives.
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of that catalyst for healing. And yeah, I feel like a lot of the conversations that I end up having are these people that are just burnt out and stressed and just so tanked. And it's like if you're running from a tiger, your body's not like, "Oh, why don't we pause and make a baby right now? That sounds like a great idea."
Yeah.
It's going in the
Yeah.
opposite direction of that. And I think when you just think about it from just a black and white perspective like that, it makes it all make a little more sense why things aren't quite going maybe the direction you want them to be.
Definitely. And so I know that everybody's different. Everybody comes in with different conditions. But what are the most common hormonal balances that you see on a daily basis?
Yeah, so I would say like maybe three top categories. So I would say like period problems, burnout, and hypothyroidism. And then
Mhm.
I would say amongst period problems, the biggest one is probably PCOS, or people that
Mhm.
have just anovulatory or super long, wonky cycles. I'm seeing those more and more. And I'm actually finding there's really two types of PCOS. There's, your typical insulin based PCOS, where, it has a lot of blood sugar issues and insulin dysregulation. But I also see like more an adrenal based PCOS, people that are super stressed out,
Mhm.
pulling hormones, sex hormones, and creating a PCOS like scenario as well without maybe symptoms such as the weight gain or the elevated hemoglobin A1C. But other than that, yeah, those would probably be the top three things I'd say.
And what type of testing do you do when people come in? Because I know there's a lot of different hormonal testing and.
Yeah, oh my gosh, there's absolutely tons. For me, it totally depends on the person. I love doing Dutch urinary and salivary testing when I can, just because I love all the information it gives us, looking at
Mm-hmm.
enzymes and pathways. But I also do work with people, and if you have a local PCP who's going to be covering the serum lab works, I do try to utilize that as much as possible. But I would say big time just between blood serum and then that urinary and salivary are the best tools to investigate.
Definitely. And so what do you find are the biggest contributors? You had mentioned stress to hormonal imbalances.
Big time. Yeah. So stress is literally, I would say, the number one factor I see affecting hormonal balances.
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing just our whole hypothalamic pituitary adrenal ovarian axis. When that gets
Right.
off and our brain stops talking to our adrenals and our ovaries appropriately, our hormones just go crazy. And then when our adrenals go crazy, our thyroid tends to sort of lose its way, and they just all play so intricately together. And when we're
Mm-hmm.
stressed, like I said, we're shunting all of our hormonal production to producing cortisol, and we're pulling away from those pools and pools of really good hormones that we need to feel good, to make neurotransmitters, um, all that stuff. But so in addition to stress, I'd also say environment is huge, and also years of synthetic hormone use. People that have been on birth control for 5, 10, 15 years, trying to get off
Mm-hmm.
it, or still being on it and just feeling crummy, or they've tried 14 different kinds and had XYZ side effects. So I think all those separately and together, unfortunately,
Yeah.
a lot of us have that whole trifecta, really
Right.
cause those imbalances.
And also, it's just interesting because a lot of people are talking about the pill, but also IUD. What are your thoughts of that?
Yeah, I
Because
mean, same.
doctors kind of make it seem like it's not that big of a deal.
Right. I think it's funny you say that because that's something I've kind of been noticing lately. People go, "Oh, I'm going to get an IUD because it's not a pill." But what we're forgetting
Mm-hmm.
is that if you're getting the Paragard, you're getting a copper IUD. Definitely a bigger fan of that. It does not elute any hormones, but things like the Mirena and Skyla, those are still synthetic hormones that you're putting in your body. And maybe it's what you need, and maybe that form of birth control is a good fit for you. But just because it's not going in your mouth doesn't mean that
Mm-hmm.
it's not being absorbed just like the pill would be in your body. That's a really, really good point.
Yeah, definitely. Because it does seem like it's like it has almost like an impression to being something that's much more benign, which
Hmm.
maybe it can be in some ways, but definitely something to think about because you are still getting hormones.
Yeah, definitely. And the one thing I will say that concerns me slightly in just looking towards the future is like looking at the Mirena IUD and like these progestin-only IUDs,
Hmm.
is that people are like, oh, it's wonderful. I just stop having my period, or I only get it every couple months, which is great,
Hmm.
especially if you have symptoms and everything. But when you come off that and you're looking to get pregnant, what I think we tend to forget about is we need that big, beautiful, juicy endometrium for that egg to nuzzle
Yep.
into and nest. And when we're
Yeah.
basically thinning that for years and years and years, you got to think about those repercussions down the road. What if it's harder to rebuild that and get it as fluffy as it needs to be, you
Absolutely.
know?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean it's all of these things, and especially to think about how delicate. You were saying earlier how delicate the balance is of hormones and how they
Mhm.
interplay, and they all speak to each other. And one small change can really affect. It's just like it's like the ecology of our own body. Any kind of disharmony, one small, just increased cortisol could really affect everything else. It's like a cascade because everything's depending on each other,
Mhm.
and it's extremely delicate, which I guess not sure if people understand. And the thing is, even as much as science has become so advanced, they can only understand so much on how adding more hormones are really gonna, like, what kind of effect that's gonna have. I still think that we haven't scratched the surface on understanding the impact of it.
Hmm. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It's crazy. And I think it's hormones are interesting in that the more you know about hormones, the less you feel like because the more you learn, the more you realize how
Yeah.
complex they are and how they change each other and how enzymes and cofactors play so much into them. And yeah, it is a rabbit hole of, yes, science we're just tapping. I agree.
Yeah. And so you were talking about environmental factors. I know that there's so many xenoestrogens, and I talked about that, like, because it's something that many people don't even realize. You get a bunch of products. You get water bottles in general with plastic. There's so
Yeah.
many ways to get fake estrogen that's going to affect your body and confuse your body because it's not recognizable, because it's not like made from nature.
Right. I think it's so interesting. And, I definitely think there's that awareness of, oh, I know stuff, endocrine disruptors, blah, 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 heard the term. But, when I ask people, do you know what endocrine disruptors mean? And they say, not really. It's like these are synthetic constituents that are binding to your hormone receptors. And they're either causing those receptors to do things or do things at a level that you don't really need. It can turn on or shut off normal hormonal signaling. And that's going to affect like
Hmm.
the function of your tissues and the organs. So, while your dryer sheets and your Glade plugins smell wonderful, how are they affecting your body, and what is your threshold for processing that out? And how do we know how much is too much for you? And it's just bringing that awareness and like the true understanding, because I think it's hard because there's lots of science that points to it, but obviously big companies aren't spending tons of money saying, proving these things against their
Yeah.
products. But
Right.
it's almost hard for people to believe, could something so small have such a significant impact? And when you see people that are
Hmm.
really sick from it, you go, absolutely, big time, or, pull all
Yeah.
these things away and you'll be amazed how you feel.
Absolutely. And the fact that, like, parabens have been found in breast cancer tissue,
Hmm.
tumors, that's scary. So it's just frightening to think
Yeah.
about.
It really is. I still remember on our, in medical school, and we had our entire environmental medicine module. I just was ready to go live in a bubble by the by the end of
Yeah,
every
I know,
class, it seemed
seriously.
like. But it's interesting though. I always say, don't get overwhelmed. It's like those little tiny changes that add up big time over time.
Yeah, and you can do something about it. I mean, there's a lot of resources and there's apps to find out what you should use. And really, there's some online stores that you could just, everything there, they have everything pretty much that doesn't have these chemicals. So it's easy once you know.
Right.
And I think it's also a combination probably of just that and also strengthening your own body so that you're able to be more resilient through nutrition and supplements.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. It's definitely
Mhm.
all those pieces put together. Yeah.
So, on that note, how do you approach balancing hormones? So, somebody comes in and say their hormones are out of whack because they've been stressed out for years, burnt out, which is the majority of people because just our life demands so much
Yeah.
more than we have reserves for. And we also don't give ourselves as much with the whole foods and years of not having proper nourishment and nutrients. So you have somebody like that that's coming in, and you've tested them. Where do you begin as far as balancing hormones? I know it's a very general question.
No, it's a great one. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's sort of the hardest thing is you get people that come in for one specific goal, whether it's having a baby or, needing to not feel anxious anymore or needing to be able to have more energy throughout the day.
Hmm.
And, when we dig in, it's like, holy cow, you've been through the ringer year after year after year. And your body is finally saying, like, I'm done. This is enough. Like, I can't keep up with what you're putting
Hmm.
me through. Um, so we definitely start by obviously taking that root cause approach and really dig in, like, what's causing this? Like, is your brain not communicating properly with your adrenals or your ovaries? are your adrenals tanked and they're not working as effectively as they should? Are we shunting to different hormonal pathways? Is your liver too gunked up to really properly process hormones? You have all the cofactors you need in order to support phase 1 and phase
Mm-hmm.
2 detoxification. Are you pooping the way you should be? Does your tummy feel good? Are you bloated every single day? Because that's not
Yeah.
normal. Really focusing on that root cause piece, because I think when people come in with a hormone thing, they think, okay, I'll take a hormone supplement and then that
Right.
will fix it. And it's like, but there's so many underlying things that can cause those hormones to be off. So it's really listening to those symptoms and then putting the pieces together.
Mm-hmm.
And then from there, pulling in lab testing as needed. But I always say, as a good practitioner, it's our job to know symptoms and listen and hear what that body is
Yeah.
saying. Labs are so good to have for data and tracking points throughout the way. But, I also feel that we should know and be listening closely enough to our, patients to really kind of already have an idea of what's going on before we even have to incorporate lab tests. And maybe we can use them down the road if we kind of hit a dead end or things aren't moving the way we want it to. But so then, just really a combination of like dietary and lifestyle changes, targeted herbal medicine, therapeutic levels of nutrients, glandulars,
Mm-hmm.
prescriptions. There's a time and a place, not very often
Mm-hmm.
at all. And usually it's just something simple like thyroid or metformin, antifungals, all the progesterone in the world, just little tiny things that can help, pull this pretty package of health back
Right,
together.
and actually, you speak about glandulars, which are a lot of times it's organ meat, basically. And
Right. Which sounds crazy. Often
no, I think it's
porcine, yeah.
actually interesting because that's it's interesting because as a culture, we used to, I mean, people used to eat organ meats, and
Mhm.
it's
Right.
actually the most nutrient part of the animal, and we've kind of strayed away, and now we're just eating muscle.
Yeah. Just lean, perfect cuts of muscle. Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It's really interesting, and yeah, it's amazing. I think it sounds a little freaky at first, but then when you step back and just think about it from a super basic perspective, my cortisol is tanked, my adrenals aren't working. If I take adrenal from something else, will it give me
Hmm.
what I'm missing while I heal myself?
Right.
So yeah, I do.
Ap-
Glandulars are very cool. I think a little
yeah,
bit
they
for people to
are.
wrap their heads around, but they're a wonderful. I like to kind of use them as a crutch in between. I don't love using them, super long term, but man, do they do the
Hmm.
trick in a pinch.
I do think so. I agree. And it's like anything. It's like any medicine, you don't overdo it, but it is
Right.
something that our bodies recognize, and it's almost like sometimes you need that extra help or that assistance. So I think they're
Mm-hmm.
pretty cool. And I was going to ask you, this is a pretty common thing. What role does the digestive system have on hormonal balance? Because I think it's huge. I think a lot of our digestive systems are shot.
Yeah. No, they really are, just from years of, our diet or, excess alcohol consumption or years of antibiotic use. And, the thing is number one, when it comes down to like gut integrity, how are you absorbing things? I mean, if
Yeah.
your gut is inflamed and you're not absorbing nutrients, that means you don't have the cofactors to make hormones, to process hormones. You don't have the building blocks. You're not breaking down proteins to get all the amino acids you need to, make your neurotransmitters. And
Hmm.
just from that perspective, like, holy cow, it's so important.
Yeah.
Then you look at, our probiotics being so important in our immune system and just the overall functioning of that. And, even when we look at our entire estrobolome in our GI tract, which is the complete processing of estrogen, it's basically our phase 3 of detox, making sure that our estrogen gets safely packaged up and sent out of our body.
Mhm.
It's hugely important.
Yeah, and then I was reading something that was actually kind of interesting, that there's a new theory about PCOS and leaky gut. Have
Hmm.
you heard about that?
I haven't read that particular article yet, but I have heard the theory, and it's
Hmm.
such an inflammatory condition to begin
Hmm.
with.
Yeah.
That it's a perfect correlation in my mind, and gut healing is always an essential component of treating that PCOS.
Right. Yeah, definitely, without a doubt. So one of the things I guess you would do is get people on a good probiotic, and we're talking not ones that they're selling over the counter.
Right. Oh, that's the one thing that does break my heart a little bit is, and I think we all could get on our soapbox and preach about it all day. But, some of these probiotics that they sell at health foods are really expensive. And you're
Hmm.
not even necessarily the thing you have to think about is probiotics are alive. You want live
Hmm.
bacteria.
Hmm.
And, there could be half dead on the shelves by the time they make it to your house. I mean, I live in Arizona. If those are being carted through a truck in 110-degree weather, that
Right.
bacteria is not going to survive by the time it makes it to your house. So you're focusing on super high quality and also high potency, and also,
Yeah.
people that are transporting it and wholesalers that are protecting it, not in, a 100-degree Amazon warehouse somewhere.
Also variety. Sometimes I say just
Yes,
do a couple of different ones at the same
I
time,
love that.
especially
Yes,
after, yeah.
I couldn't agree more. And it is amazing how, which makes sense, right? We're all super unique and different people. People can feel better on different probiotics. It can be good for one person and not for another. That being
Right.
said, if people have other, gut infections, taking a probiotic can sometimes make things worse and make you feel more bloated and crummy than you were before. So until you address that gut infection, you're just making things worse by tagging probiotics onto it. It's a
Right.
delicate dance. I mean, I think when you can just buy supplements at the store, it seems easy and simple, and I'll try one of these, and but there's a lot of science behind using them effectively versus using them kind of palliatively, I guess.
Right, because the FDA doesn't regulate them, and we can get there are certain, we're talking about medical grade, which have third party testers, so they bring
Hmm.
in somebody who's objective to test their product and show that what they have in there and what they say they have in there is really in there and is effective.
Yes, and I love the idea of third party testing too. It's like, why, if you're really honest, if you really do have good stuff, if you have your consumer's best interest in mind, which is
Hmm.
healing, um, come on in, take a look, and make sure you think everything's good as well. And if people aren't willing to be so transparent, then it's like, uh,
Yep.
maybe gonna pass on this one.
Exactly. Exactly. That's for sure. And so another thing, we're talking about estrogen dominance. What are your thoughts? I know we talked about certain contributing factors such as like just environmental, and then
Hmm.
some people say also certain foods. What are your thoughts about why estrogen dominant is so dominant nowadays?
Oh, it's such a good question. And, just to like recap for, those listening, estrogen dominance is going to look like breast tenderness, weight gain, heavy periods, headaches, mood swings, fibroids, fibrocystic breasts. That's kind of what the estrogen dominant picture looks like.
Hmm.
And diet, like you said, definitely is a huge piece of it, like high refined carbohydrates, sugar, alcohol, not eating
Hmm.
organic meats, not inorganic dairy, caffeine. They're all making estrogen dominance worse. Um, but seriously, like we talked about, earlier, the top three: environmental burden, stress, and gut health. And in that environmental burden, I also lump synthetic hormones into that, and an overburdened liver. I mean, if oral contraceptive pills are changing the gender of fish, for goodness sake, I mean,
Hmm.
we got to look at the burden they're putting on our body. Um, and, I definitely, we were talking about our environmental component. And just one thing I'm also seeing along with, gut issues is just this overburdened liver. It has too much to process, and it doesn't have all the cofactors and precursors it needs. And,
Hmm.
I think people think, a lot of times a detox is maybe I take some milk thistle, or I do a juice cleanse for a few days, and then, I'm good. But what you have to keep in mind is like that phase one, phase two, and phase three of detox, right? Phase one and phase two are happening in our liver. And we need all sorts of B vitamins and nutrients in order to enable those processes to break down hormones, package them up
Hmm.
for excretion. And I just think, and that's where kind of, again, they all come in together, the, nutritional deficiencies, the leaky gut, the liver not having what it needs to get stuff out. I just feel like that has so much to do with it.
Yeah, absolutely. And then what are your thoughts? Because I've heard so many different theories on phytoestrogens in food.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I think it's definitely a component and definitely a piece. I'm maybe a little less worried about it than average.
Hmm.
But I just feel that I guess I'm kind of a hierarchy type person, and I'm like, phytoestrogens, yes, absolutely an issue, but what's having a bigger implant? Foods with phytoestrogen content, or foods that are sprayed with pesticides that are changing our hormones as well. And I'm like, well, those, like, I want to pull first and make sure we're focusing organic on those. But yeah, it's just coming at us from every angle. I think that's
Yeah,
what kind of gets amazing and overwhelming about when you really dive into this integrative side of care. I mean, there's a lot going on in our world right now. It looks
there
pretty,
is.
our
There
technology
is.
is good, but like, holy cow, we got some burdens coming at our body that we cannot see.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, one of the things I was going to ask, how do you address people who have chronic stress? Like, how do you guide them or
Yeah.
help them?
That's a great question. People with chronic stress, we really need to focus on ways of breaking that cycle. How can we get out of that stress? How can we practice mindfulness every day? How can we get
Hmm.
past your mind every day to get you back into that parasympathetic mode? We just are living our lives in survival mode for so long, and it's hard. It is really, really hard to start to feel safe again and to I always say I send signals of safety to the body from a million different directions, as many different directions as we can. And that's what we
Hmm.
put in our mouth. That's what we put in our body. It's what we surround ourselves with. But that's also the thoughts that we put into our head. And I'm a
Yeah,
huge fan of neural reprogramming. And I love meditation, but it's tough. So I more focus on just mindfulness, and affirmations are hugely effective in my patients,
they
and they've
are.
been hugely impactful for me too. It's sometimes I listen to myself and I'm like, you're not very nice up there. Like, we need to fill that
Yeah,
with
it's funny how
some
that
nice
is.
things.
It's yeah,
Yeah.
it's weird how we can notice what we say and what we actually hear, or what's more in the material world, and what's going on in our mind. It's almost like a background that we
You
are.
don't even
It's like
know.
subliminal. We don't even realize. Like, and I call it mental hygiene. Like,
I love that term.
it's, and it's so true. Like, what's going on in there? Is it trash or is it good? Are you trash talking yourself? Like, what
Yeah.
is going on in there?
No, it's so true. And I don't think I even remember just first really tapping into that. And I did an exercise for something at one point, and it was like, just write every thought down that, comes through your head for, 10, 15
Hmm.
minutes. And I looked at the list and I was like, I'm a very positive, kind person. I feel that I try to be really kind to everybody. And I was like, but you're
Hmm.
not very nice to yourself, and it was,
Yeah,
it's just interesting. And I find when my clients are having bad weeks, even when I'm having bad weeks, you throw on, even as tacky as it sounds, an affirmations playlist, and it can just totally turn you around. You just forget how to say those things, such as like, my body is strong, capable, and healthy. I trust
yeah.
all as well. It's hard for us to say those things, and especially when you've had those negative thoughts for so long. When you first hear those words and say those words, it feels very foreign and strange and hoaxy, and it's getting to
It
that
does.
point where you start
That's such a
believing
good
those
point.
positive
I
things
love that
you
you're
say.
saying that.
Yeah.
Yeah, because for a lot of people that may want to try this, they might feel what you just said and then be like, oh, this is just not for me, and then just stop. But it's
Right.
important to actually, and I'm just mentioning, I apologize for the background noise because I have people painting the house, and I also
Oh,
have my
goody.
neighbors doing their just right in time for the podcast,
Of course.
the neighbors with their lawn. So yeah, but what's interesting, and I see the same thing with meditation, is that you get that initial resistance of what you just said, which I think is such a great point that you bring up, because it feels weird in the beginning.
Hmm.
And a lot of people will think it's so weird that they're going to not want to do it. They think they'll dismiss it
Yeah.
and then just kind of shy away from continuing. And I think that's such a good point that you mentioned, that at first it's like that, but if you continue doing it, it starts to feel more natural.
Yeah, big time. That's what I always say for people just starting out, like pick one affirmation, and I usually make them tell it
Mm-hmm.
today. My treatment plans include, supplements, diet, lifestyle, but also a lot of times if we're working on a stress piece, I have people tell me what their affirmation for the week is going to be, and I check in with them and say, did you bring awareness to this affirmation a few times a day? And it's just that little
Yeah.
baby step that, helps get past the discomfort. And, that's, I just think a manageable starting point is letting, one thing pop up on your phone a few times a day.
Yeah, I love that. It's great. And it really is so powerful. And I also love the gratitude, like just one or two things. You
Yes.
can start out with one or two things. And I'm sure can find one or two things that they're grateful for. I mean, if nothing else, I could breathe. Thank
Yep.
God for that. I mean, some people can't breathe well. Like, thank God for air.
Yes. Yeah, it's amazing how we get
But
so
yeah,
caught up in what's wrong and we stop focusing on what's right. And it's amazing how common that theme is. But yes, gratitude is absolutely essential. I could not agree more. I always
yeah,
say never get out of bed until you have a good thought in your head and can be grateful for something.
yeah, absolutely. That's such good advice and good words. And I'm sure I think all of us can use it. And I have to, even though I know this and I talk to my patients about it, I have to remind myself.
Oh yeah.
That's the thing.
Yeah, we're all constant works in progress. Absolutely. And I always think that's a big thing, with healers and practitioners is, we're always having to walk the walk too. And it's not always easy for us. We always have to pull ourselves back in and we also have a healthcare team as
It's
well.
true.
We don't,
Yeah,
zero in on
exactly.
everything. We're all the same. We really are.
Yeah, it's true. We are all the same. And I know you've given some great tips, but is there anything you want to add for the listeners?
Let's see. Well, because we've kind of just dove down the environmental medicine rabbit hole today, I'll basically say
Yeah.
these. Start with cleaning up your environment just little bit by little bit every day. It's little changes that add up to big time improvement. So here's a
Hmm.
few of my favorites. Swapping dryer sheets for like wool dryer balls. $10 on Amazon and they last you forever. Stop using
That's great.
bottled water. Switch to like a good like Berkey water filter or reverse osmosis system.
Hmm.
Swap from plastic Tupperware to glass containers. And then unplug those wallflowers and stop using air fresheners all the time. And
Hmm.
then the last one, just buy organic. If you're going to do anything, buy organic of at least the dirty dozen. Those are 12 foods that are the
Yes.
dirtiest, the most commonly sprayed. I think a lot of people hear dirty dozen, but they don't know what it means. Those are kind of like the most
Hmm.
toxic danger foods. Eat organic of at least
Yeah.
those. Make those fit into your budget. Um, those are just easy ways I think you can kind of start showing up for yourself in your environment. And then I just have to say, one other important tip is plan for pregnancy early. You spend a year planning for your
Yes.
wedding, give yourself 6 months to a year to get cleaning up that environment, cleaning up your body, getting your hormones on track before you start trying. It breaks my heart to see people who are like, months and years in already to trying. And, there's so much work to be done that does take time.
Yes.
And their biggest regret is that they just didn't think about, taking care of all these health issues before they ran into issues.
Amen to that. I really feel so strongly about that because it's just so funny how I think we've all, as a culture, gotten used to this quick fix
Mm-hmm.
and we don't do anything until we get the alarm. And I think it's so important, to prep the soil. You don't start a garden without prepping the soil first. And if you
Give me
do,
that
it's going to
miracle grow.
have consequences.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Totally. So, it's something that takes time. Our bodies are not like light switches.
Mm-hmm.
Everything is gradual. It takes time and it really needs that nourishment and that love, the TLC.
Right.
So I think that the point that you just made is just crucial. And wish more people would start paying attention to that.
I know. Yep. I'm hoping we see that change. And I feel people are talking about it more, which is a great thing. But yeah, like we talked about earlier, there's usually just those layers and layers and layers to healing. And when it's a hormonal issue, there's so many underlying things that are feeding up to that, which take time to heal. You can't necessarily heal them all at a snap of a fingers in 1 month. It's not like taking a course
Yeah,
of antibiotics. So,
exactly.
yeah, just really saying, I need to take care of myself and like my future child, and almost think of your future child as a future adult. What you do for them, for you now, is helps them and their health as an adult in the future. So,
Yeah, and it even helps the grandchildren.
yeah,
That's
it's
what I'm hearing.
epigenetics. It's crazy. It's amazing.
It is.
But yeah, that would be probably the biggest tip, which I know you're right there with me.
Yeah. Oh, totally. Because I think a lot of people in our position, we see so much and we're like, oh my God, and then when we get the patient that's like, oh, I'm not trying yet, but I really want to prepare my body. You're like,
I want to keep
oh,
them.
this
I
is
know.
great.
I'm like, gold star, gold star, gold star, gold star to everybody.
Yes.
But it's nice
Yeah.
to see. It's like, oh, we have time. Like, this is going to be good.
Yes. Like beautiful, beautiful. I
Mhm.
love it. So awesome. So how can people find you?
The best way to find me would be on Instagram. Instagram's the portal to everything else. So Dr. Patti _Haebe, Haebe. And then from there, I have a link in my bio where, people can schedule a free phone consultation to see how, I can support them, or, they can check out any like pregnancy preparation courses that I have. I keep some trusted supplements there. That's probably the best way to find me.
Fantastic. Well, this has been such a pleasure, and thank you so much. And thank you for bearing with me. I don't know if the background noises are showing up, but I'm going to silence the areas where you're talking so that, just in case there's background
Oh,
noise.
it's amazing. Technology is amazing.
It is. It is. I love it. So thank you so much for coming on. I think what you have mentioned, all the points that you mentioned, are really valuable. So thank you.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for having me. This was a real hoot.
So that concludes today's episode. You can find all the links mentioned on the episode notes. If you're enjoying these episodes, please take a moment to leave a review. Reviews are everything to podcasters. You can find me on my website at www.thewholesomelotus.com. And please be on the lookout for my online course and program. This course has emerged from everything that I've been using for the fertility program I now offer at my office. I wanted to consolidate all of my suggestions and coaching and put it into a form that anyone can purchase and use. It was important for me to encompass key fertility health factors, as well as guide you in implementing changes in your routine that are shown to boost fertility while being realistic and user-friendly. I will be offering this course with and without coaching. If you're interested and want updates, as well as a free ebook on my top 10 fertility boosting habits, you can visit my fertility page on www.thewholesomelotus.com, where you can find the subscription form. I thank you so much for listening in and hope you have a beautiful day.